The email hit my inbox at 3:47 a.m. like a punch to the gut. Alfred, I've moved your inheritance to my personal account for safekeeping. Don't worry about it. Harriet. I stared at my phone screen in the darkness of our bedroom, my wife sleeping peacefully beside me. The woman who had just stolen everything from me was breathing softly, her face calm and innocent in the moonlight. My name is Alfred Hartley, and I am 40 years old. My hands shook as I read the email again, and again. The words didn't change. 15 years of marriage. 15 years of building a life together. 15 years of trust, love, and shared dreams. All destroyed by 23 words in a cold, calculated email sent while I slept. I slipped out of bed and walked to the kitchen, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floors we'd picked out together 3 years ago. Everything in this house told the story of our life. The coffee maker we'd bought on our first anniversary. The dining table where we'd shared thousands of meals. The family photos lining the hallway. All of it felt like lies now. I made coffee with trembling hands, trying to process what I'd just read. My inheritance. The money my dear Aunt Margaret had left me when she passed away 6 months ago. $200,000 that was supposed to secure our future, help us pay off the house, maybe finally take that trip to Europe we'd always talked about. And Harriet had moved it to her personal account, for safekeeping. The bitter laugh that escaped my throat sounded foreign, even to me. I opened my laptop and logged into our joint bank account. The inheritance had been sitting there for months, untouched. We talked about what to do with it. At least I thought we had. Harriet had suggested leaving it alone for a while, letting it earn interest while we figured out the best way to use it. The account showed a balance of $327. My inheritance was gone. I clicked through the transaction history, my heart pounding harder with each entry. 3 days ago, while I was at work, Harriet had transferred the entire amount to an account I'd never seen before. An account in her name only. I sat back in my chair, the weight of betrayal crushing down on me like a physical force. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't some misunderstanding. This was calculated, planned, deliberate. My phone buzzed, a text message from Harriet's phone, even though she was asleep upstairs. Saw your email notification. We need to talk when you get home from work. H. She'd set up an automatic response. She knew I'd see the email, knew I'd check the account, knew I'd be devastated. And she'd prepared for it. Who was this woman I'd been married to for 15 years? As I sat in the dark kitchen, memories started flooding back. Little things I'd ignored or explained away. The way Harriet had become so interested in my aunt's health in her final months, always asking about her will, her savings, her plans. How she'd insisted on being the one to handle the inheritance paperwork. How she'd suggested that joint account, saying it would be easier to manage the money together. The phone calls she'd been taking in private. The way she'd close her laptop when I walked into the room. The credit card statements she'd started handling herself, saying she wanted to help with the finances. I'd thought she was being supportive. I'd thought she was stepping up to help during a difficult time. I'd been such a fool. The sun was starting to rise when I finally went back upstairs. Harriet was still sleeping, her face peaceful and innocent. I stood in the doorway, looking at her, wondering if I'd ever really known her at all. When her alarm went off at 7, she stretched and smiled at me like nothing had happened. "Morning, honey," she said, her voice sweet and loving. "Did you sleep well?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her. I wanted to demand answers. Instead, I forced a smile and said, "Just fine. You?" "Like a baby." She got up and headed for the shower, humming softly to herself. I watched her go, my heart breaking and my anger building in equal measure. At work, I couldn't concentrate. I kept staring at my computer screen, seeing that email over and over again. My co-workers asked if I was feeling okay. I told them I was just tired. How do you tell people that your wife of 15 years has stolen your inheritance and you don't know what to do about it? During my lunch break, I called my bank. They confirmed what I already knew. The transfer had been authorized using the joint account access we'd both signed for. Since Harriet was listed as an account holder, the transfer was completely legal. Legal, but not moral. Legal, but not right. I spent the afternoon researching divorce lawyers on my phone, hidden away in a bathroom stall like a teenager hiding from his parents. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, a grown man, sneaking around to research how to protect myself from my own wife. By the time I got home, I'd made 3 appointments with different attorneys. I'd also opened a new bank account in my name only, and transferred what little money we had left in our joint checking account. If Harriet wanted to play games with money, I could play too. She was in the kitchen when I walked in, cooking dinner like it was any other Tuesday night. The smell of her famous pot roast filled the air, and for a moment I almost forgot about the email, almost forgot about the betrayal, almost fell back into the comfortable routine of our marriage. "How was work?" she asked, not looking up from the stove. "Fine." I set my briefcase down and loosened my tie. "How was yours?" "Oh, you know, same old thing." She turned and smiled at me, and for a second I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with 20 years ago. Young, beautiful, full of life and dreams. "Dinner will be ready in about 10 minutes. I nodded and headed upstairs to change, my mind racing. Should I confront her now? Should I wait until I'd talked to a lawyer? Should I pretend everything was normal until I had a plan? In our bedroom, I looked around at all the things we'd accumulated together. The wedding photos on the dresser, the vacation souvenirs on the bookshelf, the clothes hanging in the closet we shared. How do you divide a life? How do you separate 15 years of shared everything? My phone buzzed. Another text from Harriet's number. "Dinner's ready. Come eat." I went downstairs and sat at our dining table. The same table where we'd shared so many meals, so many conversations, so many plans for the future. Harriet served me a plate of pot roast, mashed potatoes and green beans. My favorite meal. "I thought we could talk about that email after dinner," she said casually, cutting into her meat. I nearly choked on my food. "What email?" She looked up at me with those blue eyes I'd once found so beautiful. Now they looked cold, calculating. "The one I sent last night, about the inheritance money." "Oh," I forced myself to keep eating, though the food tasted like cardboard. "Right, that email. I know you're probably confused," she continued, her voice calm and reasonable. "But I've been doing some research, and I think there are better investment opportunities for that money. The joint account wasn't earning much interest." "Investment opportunities?" "There's this financial advisor I've been talking to. He thinks he can double our money in 6 months. She smiled like she was doing me a favor. "I know I should have talked to you first, but the opportunity was time-sensitive." I set down my fork, my appetite completely gone. "Harriet, that money wasn't just sitting in the account earning interest. It was my inheritance. From my aunt. The aunt who raised me after my parents died." Her smile faltered for just a second. "I know that, Alfred. But we're married. What's yours is mine, right? That's what marriage means. Marriage means making decisions together. It means trust. It means supporting each other," she interrupted. "And that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to grow our money so we can have a better future." I stared at her across the table. This woman I'd shared my life with, and realized I was looking at a stranger. "I want the money back in our joint account by tomorrow," I said quietly. Her eyes hardened. "I'm afraid that's not possible. The money is already invested." "Then uninvest it." "It doesn't work that way, Alfred. There are penalties for early withdrawal. We could lose thousands of dollars." I stood up from the table. "There is no we in this, Harriet. You made this decision without me. You stole my inheritance while I was sleeping." "I didn't steal anything." Her voice rose for the first time. "I'm your wife. I have every right to—" "You have every right to discuss major financial decisions with your husband before making them. You have every right to be honest about what you're doing with our money. You don't have the right to move $200,000 without telling me." She stood up too, her face flushed with anger. "You're being ridiculous. This is exactly why I didn't talk to you about it first. I knew you'd overreact." "Overreact?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My wife secretly moves my inheritance to her personal account, and I'm overreacting by being upset about it? "It's not a secret if I sent you an email about it." "An email you sent at 3 in the morning while I was sleeping." The timing doesn't matter. The point is, I told you what I was doing. After you'd already done it. We stood on opposite sides of the dining table, glaring at each other. The pot roast was getting cold between us, but neither of us cared about dinner anymore. I want to see the investment paperwork, I said finally. What? If you invested the money, there should be paperwork. Account statements. Something that shows where the money went. She hesitated for just a moment too long. I don't have it with me. It's at the financial advisor's office. Then we'll go there tomorrow. Together. He's out of town this week. Then we'll wait until he gets back. Alfred, you're being paranoid. Why can't you just trust me? The question hung in the air between us like a challenge. Why couldn't I trust her? Because she'd moved my inheritance without telling me. Because she'd lied about investment opportunities. Because she was acting like a completely different person than the woman I'd married. Because trust is earned, Harriet. And right now you're not earning it. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see something shifting in her expression. The loving wife mask was slipping, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. Fine, she said finally. If that's how you want to play this, then fine. But don't come crying to me when you realize you've made a mistake. She walked out of the dining room, leaving me standing there with our cold dinner and my shattered trust. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, then the sound of our bedroom door slamming shut. I sat back down at the table and stared at the food I could no longer eat. In the space of 24 hours, my marriage had gone from comfortable routine to open warfare, and I had a terrible feeling that this was just the beginning. That night, I slept in the guest room. Harriet didn't try to talk to me, didn't apologize, didn't explain. She just went to bed like nothing had happened, but I could hear her talking on the phone through the bedroom wall. Her voice was low and urgent, though I couldn't make out the words. Who was she talking to at 11 o'clock at night? I lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, and tried to figure out when my wife had become my enemy, and that's when I realized something that made my blood run cold. If Harriet was willing to steal my inheritance, what else was she willing to do? What other secrets was she hiding? Because I was about to find out that the missing money was just the tip of the iceberg. But first, I had to figure out how to get it back. The next morning, Harriet was gone before I woke up. No note, no text, no explanation, just an empty house and the lingering smell of her perfume. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. 3 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. When I called back, a woman's voice answered. Henderson Law Firm, this is Patricia. My stomach dropped. I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong number. I got some missed calls. Mr. Alfred Hartley? Yes. This is Patricia Wells, legal assistant to attorney Michael Henderson. Your wife has retained our services for divorce proceedings. We need to schedule a meeting to discuss asset division and... I hung up. My hands were shaking as I set the phone down. Divorce proceedings. She'd filed for divorce, without telling me, without even trying to work things out. 15 years of marriage, and she was throwing it away over a confrontation about stolen money, or maybe she'd been planning this all along. The phone rang again. Same number. Mr. Hartley, I understand this is difficult, but we really do need to... When did she file? I interrupted. Yesterday afternoon. The papers were submitted at 4:30 p.m. yesterday afternoon. While I was at work, researching divorce attorneys, she was already 3 steps ahead of me. She'd filed for divorce the same day she moved my inheritance. This wasn't a reaction to our fight. This was a plan. Mr. Hartley, are you there? I need to call you back, I said, and hung up again. I sat in my kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of our life together, and tried to process what was happening. My wife had stolen my inheritance and filed for divorce, all within a span of 24 hours. Who does that? Who plans something like that without giving any sign? I thought back over the past few months, looking for clues I'd missed. Harriet had been distant lately, but I'd attributed that to stress at work. She'd been taking more phone calls in private, but I'd thought she was dealing with a difficult client. She'd been less affectionate, less interested in our usual conversations about the future. I'd thought we were going through a rough patch. I'd never imagined she was planning an exit strategy. My phone buzzed, A text from an unknown number. Meet me at Starbucks on 5th Street at 2 p.m. Come alone. Sarah. I stared at the message. I didn't know anyone named Sarah. I texted back. Who is this? The response came immediately. Someone who knows what your wife has been doing. If you want answers, be there. Every instinct I had told me this was a bad idea. Meeting a stranger who claimed to have information about my wife sounded like the beginning of a very bad movie. But I was desperate for answers, and right now a stranger with information sounded better than sitting in my kitchen, drowning in confusion and betrayal. At 1:45 p.m., I walked into the Starbucks on 5th Street. It was busy with the lunch crowd, full of people on their phones, typing on laptops, living their normal lives while mine fell apart. I ordered a coffee and found a table in the corner, scanning the room for anyone who might be Sarah. A few minutes later, a woman approached my table. She was about 35, with short brown hair and kind eyes that looked tired. Alfred? She said quietly. I nodded. She sat down across from me, clutching a coffee cup with both hands like she was trying to warm herself. I'm Sarah Mitchell, she said. I used to work with your wife. Used to? I quit 3 months ago, because of what I found out about her. My heart was pounding. What did you find out? Sarah looked around the coffee shop, then leaned forward and lowered her voice. Your wife has been planning this for over a year. The divorce, the money, all of it. What do you mean? I worked in accounting at her company. About 18 months ago, Harriet started asking me questions about asset protection, offshore accounts, that kind of thing. She said she was asking for a friend who was going through a divorce. I felt sick. It wasn't for a friend. No, it was for her. She's been moving money around, setting up accounts, preparing for this day. When your aunt got sick, Harriet saw an opportunity. An opportunity? She knew about the inheritance before your aunt even died. She'd been monitoring her health, her financial situation, everything. She told me she was going to make sure that money never made it into your joint assets. I stared at Sarah, unable to process what I was hearing. Are you saying she planned this before my aunt died? I'm saying she's been planning to leave you for over a year. The inheritance just gave her the startup money she needed. Startup money for what? Sarah reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. For her new life, with her boyfriend. The words hit me like a physical blow. Boyfriend? His name is David Chen. He's a financial advisor. That's who she invested your money with. She slid the envelope across the table. I've been collecting evidence for months. I couldn't stand watching her destroy your life while pretending to be the perfect wife. With shaking hands, I opened the envelope. Inside were photographs, printed emails, bank statements, and phone records. The photographs showed Harriet with a man I'd never seen before. They were holding hands, kissing, looking at each other the way she used to look at me. The dates on the photos went back 8 months. The emails were between Harriet and David, discussing their plans to start a consulting business together, with my inheritance money as their initial investment. The bank statements showed multiple accounts I'd never known about, all in Harriet's name, with deposits and transfers dating back over a year. How did you get all this? I asked. I have access to the company's financial records, and David is my ex-husband. I looked up at her. Your ex-husband? He left me 2 years ago for a younger woman. Now he's leaving that woman for your wife. Sarah's voice was bitter. He has a pattern. He finds married women with money, convinces them to leave their husbands, and then uses their assets to fund his lifestyle. And you're sure about all this? I have recordings of their phone conversations. I have copies of their business plan. I have proof that they've been planning this for months. She leaned forward. Alfred, your wife didn't just steal your inheritance. She's been systematically moving your joint assets into her personal accounts for the past 6 months. I flipped through the papers, my hands shaking. Bank statements showing transfers from our joint accounts to accounts I'd never heard of. Credit cards opened in my name without my knowledge. Loans taken out against our house. She's been preparing for this divorce for over a year, Sarah continued. She's been hiding assets, inflating expenses, and building a case to make sure she gets as much as possible in the settlement. Why are you telling me this? Because I know what it's like to be betrayed by someone you trust, and because I want David to pay for what he's done. To both of us. I sat back in my chair. overwhelmed by the evidence in front of me. My wife hadn't just stolen my inheritance on impulse. She'd been planning to destroy our marriage for over a year. Everything, the joint accounts, the helpful attitude about finances, the interest in my aunt's health, had been part of a long-term plan to take as much money as possible and disappear. "What do I do with this?" I asked. "You take it to the best divorce attorney you can find, and you make sure Harriet doesn't get away with it." Sarah stood up to leave, then turned back to me. "Alfred, there's one more thing. The house you're living in? She took out a second mortgage on it 3 months ago. You're about to lose your home too." She walked away, leaving me sitting in the coffee shop with a pile of evidence and the ruins of my life spread out on a small table. I drove home in a daze. The house that had been our sanctuary now felt like a crime scene. Every room held evidence of Harriet's deception. The home office, where she'd been planning my destruction. The bedroom, where she'd been pretending to love me while planning to leave me. The kitchen, where she'd served me my favorite meal while lying to my face about everything. I called the first divorce attorney on my list, a woman named Rebecca Torres, who'd been recommended by a friend years ago. "I need to see you today," I told her assistant. "It's an emergency." 2 hours later, I was sitting in Rebecca's office, laying out the evidence Sarah had given me. Rebecca was in her 50s, with grey hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She looked through the papers methodically, occasionally making notes or asking questions. "This is quite a collection," she said finally. "Where did you get all this?" I told her about Sarah, about the meeting, about everything I'd learned. "Well, the good news is that we have clear evidence of asset concealment and financial fraud. The bad news is that your wife has been planning this for a long time, and she has a head start." "What does that mean?" "It means she's probably already filed motions to freeze your access to joint accounts, claim temporary support, and potentially force the sale of your home." Rebecca leaned forward. "Alfred, I need you to understand something. Your wife isn't just leaving you. She's trying to destroy you financially. Can we stop her?" "We can try, but first we need to move fast. I'm going to file an emergency motion to freeze all assets until we can sort this out. I'm also going to request a full financial audit of both your accounts and hers." "What about the inheritance money? If we can prove it was moved fraudulently, we might be able to get it back. But it's going to be a fight." I left Rebecca's office feeling like I was preparing for war, which, I realized, I was. That evening I sat in my living room, looking at the photos on the mantelpiece. Pictures of Harriet and me at our wedding, on vacations, celebrating anniversaries. All of them now felt like lies. My phone rang. It was Harriet. "Alfred, we need to talk." "I think we're past talking. I heard you met with a lawyer today." Her voice was cold. All pretense of loving wife finally dropped. "That was a mistake." "The only mistake I made was trusting you. You don't understand what you're dealing with. If you fight me on this, you'll lose everything. The house, the savings, everything." "I've already lost everything. You made sure of that. I'm trying to be reasonable here. Take the settlement my lawyer offers, and we can both move on with our lives." "Settlement?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You mean the settlement where you keep my inheritance and I get nothing? You'll get your fair share." "My fair share of what? The debt you've accumulated? The mortgages you've taken out behind my back?" There was a long pause. How did I find out?" "Because someone who actually cares about right and wrong told me the truth." "Alfred, listen to me. You can't win this fight. I have better lawyers, more evidence, and I've been preparing for this longer than you have." "We'll see about that. Don't be stupid. Take the deal and walk away while you still can." "No. No. No. I'm not walking away. I'm not letting you destroy my life and get away with it. I'm going to fight you, Harriet, and I'm going to win." I hung up and turned off my phone. For the first time since I'd read that email, I felt something other than despair. I felt angry. And anger, I was learning, was a much more useful emotion than heartbreak. Over the next 3 weeks, Rebecca worked like a woman possessed. She filed emergency motions to freeze all assets. She requested a full financial audit. She subpoenaed records from David's investment firm. And that's when we discovered the real scope of Harriet's betrayal. David Chen wasn't just a financial advisor. He was running a sophisticated fraud operation, targeting married women with significant assets. Harriet wasn't his first victim. She was his accomplice. The FBI got involved when we discovered that David and Harriet had been running this scam on multiple couples across 3 states. My inheritance was just the latest in a string of thefts totaling over $2 million. The day of our divorce hearing, Harriet walked into the courtroom expecting an easy victory. Her lawyer had prepared arguments about marital assets and spousal support. Instead, she found FBI agents waiting for her. "Harriet Webb," Agent Martinez said, approaching her table, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, and racketeering." The color drained from Harriet's face as the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. She looked at me across the courtroom, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I saw fear in her eyes.
"Alfred," she called out as they led her away. "Alfred, please. I can explain everything."
But there was nothing left to explain. The trial lasted 6 months. Sarah testified about what she'd witnessed at the company. The FBI presented evidence of the broader fraud scheme. Other victims came forward to tell their stories. Harriet tried to claim she was manipulated by David, that she didn't know what she was doing. But the emails Sarah had collected told a different story. They showed Harriet actively recruiting new victims, celebrating successful thefts, and planning new schemes. In the end, she was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. David got 12. I got my inheritance back, plus damages that totaled nearly $300,000, but more importantly, I got my life back.